What's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and before we start today's episode, I need to tell you about my sponsor, W Energy. Now, what is W Energy? I'm going to let you know because I myself am now a user of W Energy. It is clean energy. That's right. It's not like your normal canned trash energy drinks that I have been addicted to. I've been looking for a reason to drop all my old energy drinks that were unhealthy for me. Too much additives, too much trash in it, too much stuff that's going to make you crash, make you fall asleep at the end of the day. Not W. So how can you get your hands on some W to try? I'm going to tell you how. And I'm going to tell you how to save some money while you do it. Go to www.w.gg and at checkout, type in my new promo code, and it is Who Else? That's right. The promo code at www.w.gg is Who Else? Because, hey, who else but me, your boy Jay? I wouldn't steer you wrong, right? And when you do, make sure you tag your boy. Let me know you got some, you tried it, and I know you're going to love it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, I've got a great one planned for everybody watching today. It is Dante Rusciolelli, but you can just call him Dante. I had a blast talking with him. I really think everybody's going to enjoy this episode, especially if you're a fan of comedy. We've got a lot of cool stories that we talk about. And it was a real pleasure talking to him. So, Dante, if you're watching this, thank you very much for the time. I really enjoyed this one. And I enjoy every episode that I've done. But this one, I don't know. There was something about it. I just like having conversations about comedy and hearing people's backstories of how they came up. And, especially for people that have got a resume like Dante has. So, anyway, I'm going to stop babbling and let you guys enjoy this episode after a word from my sponsor. Check it out, y'all. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Piqua, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martin's has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martin's. I've always loved going to Crazy Martin's ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martin's. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Piqua, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, I have got somebody who has appeared on over 40 TV shows as a comedian. He once ran for mayor in the city of Los Angeles, which was crazy to find out in my research. He was also a cast member on a show that's a favorite of mine, Last Comic Standing, which is where I know his face from. And he's performed for more U.S. troops than any other comedian except Bob Hope, which much kudos to this guy. And he is the owner of Golden Artist Entertainment. It is Dante, and he just goes by Dante. That's it. So don't try to pronounce his last name because even he doesn't
always
know
try my last name. I think it's pronounced SpaghettiOs. I'm not sure. No one knows how to say it, I don't think.
Dante SpaghettiOs, I don't think will work outside of like SpongeBob, but we can go with that.
I agree. Well, thanks for having me on the Rose Show, man. This is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being a guest, my man. Well, let's go ahead and start off with just some simple stuff, and let's get your background and kind of tell me what it was like being a little Dante.
So, yeah, I always wanted to be a comedian ever since I was 7. And I started doing it at my school and on the military base where I live. And then my career was over because I'd performed at every venue you could back then. And so when I was around 12, my parents moved me to San Diego. And then when I was 15, I got into stand-up. and my
Wow.
career took off. It was crazy. Yeah, like right away I was working. It was the 80s, man, and comedy was booming back then.
Yeah, sure. So did you have any influences when you were young? Like, did you watch certain comics? Obviously, if it was the 80s, obviously like Eddie Murphy and the Saturday
Sure.
Night Live crew was the
Yeah,
big one.
man.
Were there specific ones that you tried to mold yourself at? Because that's
Well,
impressive to
Eddie
me.
Murphy was a good one for sure. That was a good one. Yeah, it's funny. I loved Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby. Oh man, Bill Cosby, what happened there? Sometimes you think you can trust people in sweaters, but you can't always trust sweaters, man. Not always. Sometimes, mostly, but not all.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I was a huge Richard Pryor fan. And what's crazy is later in life, he became one of my mentors and friends. And I still have his phone number in my phone. And it actually comes in handy because I end up having to speak to his ex-wife a lot about certain things.
Oh wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I
Nice,
can't seem to
nice.
get rid of old phone numbers. I'm weird like that.
Dude, I'm the same way. I've got even on my Facebook page, like there's certain profiles I just can't delete. Like it's just
Yeah.
something about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if
I
someone
understand
passes
that
away, it's
completely.
hard for me to get rid of their history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand. So, and it's funny because I was talking to a comedian by the name of Reno Collier just yesterday.
Okay.
Um, for me, and just because I like talking about stuff when it comes to like comedy like this, because the dichotomy of how diverse comedy can be. For me, growing up in the 90s, because I was born in 1986. So the early 90s was like
Did you
when
say
I really
86?
started. Yes, 86. Yes,
That's when I
yes.
started comedy. So you're as old as my career.
Nice. Hell yeah. Nice, nice, very nice. So when I go back and I think of what I know like Eddie Murphy from and Robin Williams and comedians like that, like I think of the Nutty Professor and Dr. Doolittle and Robin Williams, I think of Flubber and Mrs. Doubtfire. And then as a young adult, I go back and I watch some of the comedy from the 80s that they did, and I'm like, oh, Raw is nothing like this. And like some of the old Robin Williams stand up. And it's funny. Do you find like artistically, because obviously you own your own talent agency now. Artistically, do you feel like comedy is more of an open outlet than any other form of entertainment? Because I feel that way.
For sure it is because there's it's like the Wild West. We don't have any rules still. We're not
Sure.
governed by any sort of unions or rules. It is the Wild West. We are lone gunslingers out there that say and do whatever we want, taking full responsibility upon ourselves for anything that
Yeah.
we say and do because it's not going to affect a whole crew like a movie set. You know what I mean? Like if an actor on a movie set does something stupid, it could affect the whole movie and get everyone fired. If I say and do something stupid, it only gets me fired. Maybe it even
Sure.
gets you canceled these days, but for the most part, I'll say this, if you go back in your own head and you go how many comics have been canceled, it's a small amount. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if you really think about it, there's Michael Richards who said the N-word at the Laugh Factory, got him canceled
Mm,
right at the beginning of the internet and social media. You know what I mean? Um,
sure.
Louis C.K. got canceled due to the Me Too stuff, but it seems like he's I don't know if he's over it or we forgave. I don't know what happened there, but it's like he still has a career which is fine, whatever. I don't know, who knows. I don't like what he did, but
Yeah.
I guess that's not the point. The point is to have this many people out there using their voice to say anything that they want. It's amazing that there aren't more people canceled because I think what it is people go, well, comics can get away with almost anything. Because if it is a joke, you can't really be mad. I mean, if Michael Richards calls someone the N word, that's not a joke. But if he
Right.
has a
Yeah.
joke that had the N word in it and it was clever enough, we all would not even notice it.
Sure. And that is a very good point because it seems like, especially when it comes to the canceled comedians, they had to do something really extreme. And I feel exactly the same way as you do when it comes to Louis C.K. And I'm a big fan myself. I think he's great. I think he's fantastic. But his comedy style is all based on making you uncomfortable. Now, does that mean what he did was okay? Not even in the slightest. But he kind of gets a pass because in his material, he's very open about doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, it feels like like you said, Bill Cosby, Michael Richards. You have to do something really extreme in that kind of art form to get canceled. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, man, and I guess the Louis C.K. one bothers me too because I'm the same way. I'm a huge fan of his stand up, and when this
Yeah.
happened, I knew some of the people that he had done those things to, and it did hurt their careers. Like some of the female comics he did that to aren't comics anymore because they got more hate by turning him in than he got
Really?
by doing it, and
Mm.
that makes me sad too. It's like, oh, so someone can do something really shitty to someone else, and they're the one who gets canceled for it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Like I don't even know what to say on the whole subject other than I wish none of it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a side I think a lot of people don't know, that there was people that got in more trouble than he did, and he was the one that was the offender. That's
Right.
crazy.
Like yeah, a lot of times if there's a famous comedian and you turn them in for Me Too or whatever, everyone calls you a liar. They death threat people. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. It's a
Interesting.
crazy thing. I just watched a video today about how Jay Moore was complaining that because Bobby Lee and Joe Rogan had said a few negative things about him, maybe stealing material, that it ruined his career. Like he went from selling out giant theaters to working bars. I was like, that's crazy.
And that's there's another point that I didn't think of until right this moment. It's funny because you can get canceled by doing something really shitty or stealing someone's jokes. In the case of a Dane Cook, who, when I was in high school, Dane Cook was on top of the world. Same thing with Carlos Mencia. As I was coming out of high school, Carlos Mencia on top of the
Top of
world.
the world.
They they find out you stole their jokes, bro. That's as bad as saying the N word on stage,
Right. And you
apparently,
know
and
what's
that is
crazy, dude?
crazy.
Carlos had been stealing for years,
Yeah.
and was kind of open about it. I remember I was doing a show in LA back in the 90s, and there was a comic named Willie Barcena who was running the show, and I was headlining. And Willie said, he opened the show, right? And then he brings me up, and then he goes, "Hey, Dante, Carlos is up next. Bring up Carlos." So I bring up Carlos, and Carlos gets up on stage and does one of Willie's jokes that Willie had already done, but Carlos had just walked in and didn't see it. But Carlos, he knew he stole it from Willie, and the crowd started booing him and said, "That's Willie's joke." And he looks at Willie and goes, "Is that your joke, bro?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, sorry, I'm stealing it, but I'm more famous than you. I'm going to get it on TV. Where are you going to put it? Nowhere. Is that okay with you?" And Willie, being afraid because Willie wasn't famous in 95 or whatever, went, "Yeah, okay, you can have it." But I watched that physically go down on stage. And the crowd just went on and started, continued laughing. Maybe they thought it was part of the show, but I saw him steal from a million people before Joe Rogan called him out. And then I thought when Joe Rogan called him out, he called him out on the worst joke ever. He called him out on a joke that every comic had written. It was about the border wall. The joke was, if you keep Mexicans out, who's going to build the wall? Every comic in the world had that joke.
Yeah, yeah. And he did it on his TV show too. Because before I really knew that who he was, the only thing I remembered him from was the stand-up that got him the show, and then Mind of Mencia. He did that same exact show on his show too. So not only was he stealing it and putting it in clubs, he did it on a national level. And that's insane. And that's does that happen as much as it's portrayed to happen? Like, do comics constantly steal each other's stuff, or is it
No,
just kind of like,
no.
no, okay.
Carlos was an anomaly that we all talked about. And it's like, he never stole my stuff, but he stole so many people's stuff. And like, you know, comedy club owners like Mitzi Shore would kind of defend him and be like, well, I don't care. And it's like, I'm not speaking out of turn. Like I was in Kansas City when all this happened. I started at the Comedy Store when Joe Rogan was starting there. Like we had the same manager at one point. Me and
Hmm.
Carlos were doormen together. Like I knew everybody. I still know everybody. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I was there for all of it. I watched it all go down, man, right in front of my eyes. It was crazy.
Man, that's wild to think about. Well, back to you and kind of your start in comedy and all that. Was there anything that when you were starting off? Because like for me, I have a background in music, and I really excelled at being a front man because I'm comfortable, talking with complete strangers and doing stuff like this. But it was always hard for me to write the music.
What kind of music?
Later when it was, I guess you could describe it as new metal. It's more punk rock, hip hop is what we did. It was a blend of more like heavy metal and punk rock and rap all mixed into one.
I love that.
For anybody that listening, we used to call ourselves Menace to Sobriety. Unfortunately, we were a COVID casualty. Menace was around for about 20 years, even before I joined. So like it
Oh,
was one of
wow.
those bands that have done quite a bit in the scene that we were in. But when I joined the band, I didn't really have to worry about that. My job was really only, being a front man, and then the rest came later. When you started comedy, was there anything that you found more difficult, or something that was surprisingly easy to you, or was it just one big learning curve?
Man, it's all hard when you first start out. It is. But you know what's the hardest? I'll be honest with you. Playing audiences that aren't mixed, meaning like when you play a
Mm,
regular comedy club, you're going to have women, men, gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everybody, right? Going
yeah,
into a room that is all female, all men, all gay, all black, way harder, mentally at least.
really.
Because if you go play an all Italian show, they almost expect you to talk about Italians. Um, like I got very well known in the 90s on BET on a show called Comic View. And the way
Mm.
I got on there was I had gone to high school and junior high with Faison Love. Do you know who he is? He
Yeah,
played
absolutely. Big Worm.
Big
Big
Worm,
Worm.
yeah.
Hmm.
He and I have known each other since we were little, and yeah, man, he told me to go play something called Smokey's Nightclub. It was by our house. It was a guy named Smokey Gaines. He owned a Chargers football bar, but he ran comedy, black comedy, on certain nights. And Faison told me to go up there. And I went up there. I was terrible, terrible, horrible. I'm probably even said you people or something. I'm sure I said everything wrong. You know what I mean? I'm
Right,
sure I did
right.
it all wrong. And afterwards, he was laughing at me. He's like, man, that was terrible. I'm like, you don't have to tell me. He goes, here's what you need to do. He goes, this is not like playing in La Jolla. He goes, because we were down in San Diego, is where we grew up. He goes, man, come watch the shows for a month and then come back up. And he was right. I watched for a month and I realized black comedy in the 90s was not the same thing as performing in La Jolla to a mixed crowd. There were
Sure.
different jokes being told about different things or bringing up, rap music or whatever. It wasn't just like, hey, and then my mom took me to the beach and I told this joke. It was other jokes. And I had to learn how to play there. And then once I mastered, like playing to different audiences, I was still afraid because there were still audiences out there that I had never played, like an all gay audience. And I was like, man, they're going to hate me. And sure enough, they did because I wasn't playing to them. And I was like, I have to do the same thing I did with black crowds and just sit here and watch for a month. And I did. And I went, oh, everyone's the same. They just culturally have some differences that you have to play into and know that as you walk in. And also when you have no fear, you're funnier. Like I realized after playing black rooms for so long, I went from being afraid to say anything to saying the most horrific things to black people and they thought it was funnier.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask you this, and I'm not asking you to take any sides or anything like that, but at the beginning, I started doing this show at the beginning of the year in January.
Yeah.
And when I started listening to any podcast I could possibly find to try to not necessarily steal from people, and I think anybody that's watched this show longer than 2 or 3 episodes know, like I've got a plethora of my own stuff. You can
Right.
look through my roster. I'm not stealing anyone's anything, but I just like getting inspiration on certain things. And at the time, Shannon Sharp's episode with Cat Williams had blown up on a massive proportion. And since you brought up Faison, I wanted to ask you what your opinion was of all the things that Cat Williams said, not only of Faison Love, but all the other comedians. Like, and you obviously have some backstage, behind the scenes thoughts on that interview. What were your thoughts when that came out, when he's basically just shotgun blasting everyone and putting everybody out there like that?
I hate to say it. I thought it was hilarious, man. I think most comics did, as long as they weren't in the gunshot fire.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I mean, for real, because that is who he is. And he talks like that on stage, off stage. He just happened to be super duper honest on that Shannon Sharp interview, man. It was like,
Yeah,
I can't look, I don't remember the specifics because I watched it then and I moved on. But
sure.
I will say this, I don't remember hearing anything that I went, yeah, that's not true. I mean, I didn't know
Mm,
for a fact that everything was the truth, but
yeah,
I also couldn't disagree with the stuff I did know was the truth.
sure.
I don't even remember what he said about Faison.
It sounds like to me, and I didn't do too much of a deep dive on where the beef started, but it sounds like to me there's just some sour grapes between the both of them where maybe Cat feels like, because again, what did we say when you brought up Faison? I said Big Worm. If you were to bring up Cat Williams, I wouldn't bring up Money Mike. But at the same time, you could argue that Money Mike launched the career of Cat Williams, whereas in Faison didn't really hit those heights with Big Worms. So it seems like, from my perspective, as a complete outsider, just a fan, it seems like there's always going to be a butting of heads there because it seems like I should have been bigger than him, and Cat's like, you're beneath me. And there's, that's kind of what I got from it. But there's always do you find like there's a lot of that competitiveness in the comedy world
You
between
know what, man?
people?
I only notice it once people get famous. Before that, we're all
Mm,
like brothers, I swear. And
yeah,
and yes, sure, there's going to be some jealousy here and there. There's always people who are jealous of someone else. I've never been like that. Really. Like when someone makes it, I'm always the one like, "Oh my god, did you guys see who just made it? Congrats to so and so."
sure.
Like I'm always happy for them. Um but of course there's haters in every business, and there's
Yeah.
people who are like, well, why did they make it and I didn't? I've never felt like that. Like I just told a story recently on a podcast where um, there was a guy from college named Eric Bishop that I helped get into comedy. His girlfriend was like, "Hey, will you help him get into stand up?" Blah blah blah. And so I called the comedy store and they said, "Well, we don't have any more spots, but you can give him part of your time." And I took him to the comedy store and he went up and killed. And then Faison started saying to him, "I know you don't have a car. I'll drive you," or whatever. And so he started doing stand up. Well, after about a year, he moved up to LA, changed his name to Jamie Foxx, and he has an Academy Award now. Am I jealous of him? Not for 1 second. I'm happy for him. Even though we don't
Yeah.
even talk anymore, I could care less. To me, it's just one more person along the way that made it. Like, good for him. Like, no one's taken money out of my family's, account or food off the table because they got famous.
Yeah.
Would I have the same roles as Jamie Foxx or Faison or Cat? Or would they even have the same roles as each other? I doubt it. So for them to be upset with each other instead of cheering each other on has always been bizarre to me because I'm a cheerer, not a hater. But I think haters are funny. Haters have always been funny, man. I love watching cats say dumb, crazy shit.
Yeah. I've watched that interview probably 100 times in the span of the last 7 months. There's just something and it's not even necessarily for the drama. For me, like I like shit that's gonna touch your nerves. And that whole interview was nothing but him poking the bear. Now, sometimes it does kind of like when he was saying my long game's impeccable when it comes to golf. It's like, come on, dude, calm down. But like some of the more controversial stuff I love because again, I grew up in the 90s and the 90s was all anti-establishment. And that's my entire personality has always been anti-establishment. So I love shit like that. But and it seems it's weird. I guess I shouldn't say weird. It makes more sense that that competitiveness would be in comedy more than anything because the amount of you brought up BET Comic View. I used to record at 9 o'clock at night here in Ohio is when BET's Comic View came on, and I used to press record on the tape player and go to bed and just sit there and watch a film strip of comedians. That's where I first found Cat Williams. I'm sure I probably even saw you on there as well. Other comedians like Lavelle Crawford, Shang, all those type were all on Comic View, and there's so much talent out there, even back then to now when it comes to comedy. I mean, you
So
can you
much
really
talent.
blame it? Yeah,
So
yeah,
much.
yeah,
I mean, that's where Cedric got his start. That's where DL Hughley got his start. That's where Samore got
yeah.
her start. That's where everybody got their start.
I still got those tapes somewhere. I plan on sending them out to be digitized because they won't play for nothing. I've wore them out so much.
I know, man. You could probably put those up online and like get a million views because everybody's looking for
Yeah,
those tapes.
right. Well, now that Kevin Hart owns the rights to it, he would take that shit down within seconds. I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so a couple more things real quick while I still got you. The mayor of LA thing, how exactly did that come about?
So I didn't want to become the mayor of LA, but I knew I was famous enough to get on TV if I ran for mayor. And there were things that I wanted
Mm,
changed in LA because I love my city. I do. I love my city. And there were things, especially back in 2001 when I ran, that were really messed up. Like where we hold the Academy Awards now is called Hollywood Highland, and it's got this big shopping complex. But when I was living here throughout the 90s, I lived in Hollywood and had to walk by it, and it was terrifying because there were street people that were like these cracky people that would come out in droves, young kids, like, I don't know, 16 to 30, that would run in packs and just grab people, bring them in there, rob them, rape people. Like, it was crazy because it was an abandoned building that they had started construction on and then stopped for like 5 years. And so I wanted it either torn down or built. We had a real problem with street hookers everywhere, especially near the boulevards, and it was like making tourists not want to come to Hollywood anymore. We didn't have a carpool lane at the 405 and the 101, and it was not only messing up traffic, it was also not helping people who were helping the environment, let's say, by using the carpool lane and
Sure.
carpooling together. So those are just like three examples of things that I was like bringing up on the news and everywhere else when I was debating these guys. And I even turned to the one guy. I was like, man, you know, you're going to win mayor, right? He's like, why are you saying that? I didn't say it on TV. He goes, you don't want to win? I'm like, no, you're going to win. I'm just bringing up all this stuff so that you change things. I'm pressuring you so that when you become mayor, you change them. And sure enough, within the first year, they built that place. They put a carpool lane. They did what I said about the prostitution, which was just enforce the no solicitation. I mean, not solicitation. No, what is that called when you stand in front of a place too long? Um,
Loitering.
Loitering laws. No, yeah, enforce the loitering laws, and they did. So it cleaned up everything I said, man. It was crazy. So I loved it. I'm glad I ran for mayor.
Yeah, that's super smart. Hell yeah. Nice. Very well done. Very well done. So, what again, as I said in the intro, you said, in your bio rather, you've performed for more US troops than Bob Hope. That's correct?
Well, not then Bob Hope.
Oh,
Anyone except Bob Hope. Yeah.
okay. Okay. Let's talk about that a little bit. Some of your experiences doing that, because I'm sure that was pretty cool.
So what happened was when I first moved to San Diego, there were all these bases that the Comedy Store was booking. You know, like the guy who was the manager at the Comedy Store, he kept getting calls from these bases asking for comedians. And the next thing you know, he was like setting up comedy once a week at all these different bases during the day, at night. And because I was a kid still, I was able to go on the bases and perform, even though I was like 15, 16. Whereas at the Comedy Store, I had to run in and run out until I turned 21, or actually, I lied. So I actually got in there with a fake ID when I was like 19, I think, maybe even 18.
Mm.
But so I started playing all of those bases. And next thing you know, those guys would say, hey, we've got a show in Japan. Do you want to play there? Do you want to play here? And then when I got on BET, there were so many bases that started hitting me up that had, you know, like even BET tours that were coming through. So it'd be like me and Shang and Arnez J and Jay Lamont and, you know, whoever else, Hope Flood, or, you know, and we would all just tour around together and start playing all these bases. And then next thing you know, I'm in Japan for a month, and then I'm in Korea for a month, and then I'm in the Middle East for a month. And, you know, cut to 37 years later, and you look back, and now the USO is giving me all these awards going, yeah, you've performed more than, you know. So it's been really crazy. I want to know more about what's behind you. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Sure. We can do that real
I'm a
quick.
big
This will be a
collector.
first.
Yeah,
I am a big collector. Yeah.
so am I. So am I, man. I have so much stuff.
Yeah.
I
So
want to know what's behind you. So
directly
tell me about it.
directly to the left of me, I guess to the right of you, these are all the tour passes and passes that I've gotten over my time in music. It's just something that I kind of hang up on the wall, especially now that I never used to hang these up, but when I started doing the show, I did, because it's kind of like a reminder of, you know, anything is possible. So when I started doing music, I had to become my own promoter because nobody would book me. And the reason why nobody would book me is because this area, being the Dayton, Ohio area, it's very not necessarily competitive, but nobody wants to give anybody a chance to do anything. So I realized, like, if I didn't want to drive 3 hours north to Cleveland or 2 hours to Cincinnati to get one opportunity, I'm going to have to create my own. Same thing with this show. Now that I'm no longer in a band and no longer doing music, it's like I still want to entertain. I still want to get that outlet out because, again, I love being a front man. I
Good
love
for
doing
you.
stuff like this, you know? And so I hang that on the wall, a lot of these passes, and I've got a contract right here from my very first gathering of the Juggalos that I did, tour posters, all this stuff up here to just
Did you
as a
say the
reminder,
Juggalos?
like, That was the primary, because that's what I grew up listening to. But even as you look at my shirt, like anything metal, anything of that scene, that's kind of what I'm into. So
Right
yeah,
on, man.
that was.
Those guys are wild.
Yes, they are.
I
Yes, they
partied
are.
with them one night. I used to manage Ron Jeremy, and one night after a show, we all went to this club together, and they were nuts.
Yeah, yeah, it's a different scene, man. My wife, when we first got together, was not ready to walk in that kind of stuff. That's for sure.
No,
But so yeah, everything else, like I've got Cincinnati Reds bat, WWE Money in the Bank, some Power Ranger stuff, and then behind me, I got some Funko Pops and some Dragon Ball Z characters. So just some stuff to kind of shows, and obviously a poster of the Gorillas because I'm a huge fan of the Gorillas.
you
So
know, there's a
that's
comedian named Mark Britton who does a lot of voices on Dragon Ball Z. I actually
I
manage him.
think. Oh, no kidding!
Yeah. So if
I
you
did
have
not know that.
anything that was his character, maybe we can get it signed for you or something.
Dude, that would be awesome. Hell yeah, we'll have to look that up. Yeah, for sure. Or maybe we can work him out to get him on here because I'd love to have that
Yeah, let's do it.
conversation with him.
I bet
Absolutely.
you we can get him next time you want to do a show. He would probably love to do
Yeah,
it.
absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that off air for
And I've got a
sure.
whole bunch of clients at Golden Artist Entertainment. People can look it up. But yeah, if you're into wrestling, I've got Paul London is one of my clients. A whole bunch of
Nice.
people, man. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you do that plug here in a second, but before we get there, I just wanted to ask you because I love hearing road stories. I love hearing about things that people hold close to their heart when it comes to memories. Because again, as I just mentioned, I keep mine on the wall literally to remind me of stuff
I
like that.
love it.
Because it's, these are things that it's not about the money when it comes to this kind of thing. When it comes to entertainment, it's about what we've experienced, in my opinion. So, is there anything that you've experienced over your time doing comedy where it's like, man, this is the moment that I remember more than anything, or is it just a big blur?
God, man. You know what? To be honest with you, I'm writing my book right now, and every every day that I wrote in it, I went, "Oh my gosh, I'm the luckiest man that ever lived." You know, like I had Prince come out to watch me do stand up one night. Um,
Wow.
you know, like I used to run. I don't know if you watched this. There was a Netflix special about Fat Tuesday comedy at the Comedy Store, where Guy
Yes.
Torrey had started comedy there. But I actually started the room. Before that, it was upstairs in the belly room on Tuesdays, and I ran it for years and years until I got so famous on BET that I gave it to Guy, and he kept it going up there, and then eventually moved it downstairs and called it Fat Tuesday. But when I ran it, man, it was so popular upstairs that every night, this was what's amazing, every night people in the crowd that came out, Shaq was there almost every week, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. I was friends with Tupac because he was there all the time. Even MC Hammer was there. Everybody, like the Wayans brothers, were always performing on the shows. Like it was nuts. Everyone that you can think of that was a black celebrity or in black comedy or is still in black comedy was there at the time. It was the most amazing few years of running a stand-up show I've ever had. It was
Wow.
insane. It was insane.
That's pretty awesome. And if anybody hasn't checked it out, definitely check out that Netflix documentary that Guy Torrey put together because that was very
I
well
haven't
done.
even
Yeah.
watched it, but people say I'm in it. Like I don't know if I even speak or anything, but I guess I'm, in the old videos and stuff you can see me. It's pretty
Oh hell
crazy.
yeah. That's awesome. Well, I do want to appreciate you giving me this time to talk to you. Again, this is the first time, obviously, other than when we set this up, that we've met. I got a great respect for anybody who hits the road chasing a dream or anything like that because I've lived it. I know what it takes to do it. I know how hard it is, and I know how hard it is because at one point I'm like, I ain't fucking touring anymore. I've had plenty of opportunities for
It's
people to
rough.
come out and ask. It is. It's super rough. People don't understand, man. And I tell people this all the time because they say, oh man, you've been to a lot of cool places. No, I've seen a lot of cool places from the exit. That's pretty much what it comes down to. When you're out there, you're working. So it's a hard life. So, like I said, I've got a lot of respect for people that do stuff like that. And especially comedians dealing with some of the stuff that you guys have had to deal with over the years with working crowds that just want to kill you. And man, ugh, much respect to you, man. Seriously.
Thanks, man. And you hit on something that's really important that I should say to anyone who wants to be in the entertainment business. There are really two sides of it. There's the people who become very wealthy and very famous, And I'm not necessarily sure that that's even what I ever wanted. Maybe even if I did, I don't want it now, because it's very uncomfortable. Even when I had my BET fame, to feel like people are filming you when you're trying to eat, or like when I was on Last Comic Standing, I'd show up to a movie theater with my daughter and I could see people like turning their phone to film me, and you know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine if I were really famous. So there's that you get, and some people want it. But then the other part of it is, you're either going to be poor or just getting by, but more importantly, you're going to live life better than almost anyone else. So you may be not the wealthiest, but you're going to have the best life experiences. To where, I mean, how many people can say that they were friends with, Tupac, or had, Prince show up to one of their shows to come watch them because they were a fan, or any of those experiences. It's like most people would pay all that they have to have one kind of crazy experience like that, but unfortunately most people don't have it. They have, they work at some job under fluorescent lights for 30 years and then get a watch and retire. And
Yeah.
unfortunately for a lot of entertainers, we can't retire because there is no retirement. Where's the retirement coming from? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
there's no musician fund.
Yeah, that's true. That's
So there's good and bad in both, but I always feel like life experience is way more important than money. Happiness is better than money.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's one story that Violent J of ICP tells in his audio book or book, whatever, which one you wanted to check out, where he's talking about Prince and what you said to the level of stardom. When you worked for Prince, you weren't allowed to look at him. If you saw him coming, you had to look down at the ground. And people hear that and they're like, "Oh, what a stuck-up asshole." Look at it from this perspective. You have hundreds of people working for you almost every single day, and every single one of them want to sit there and stare at you. Don't sit here and tell me that you would be okay with that. Because like you said, even you're in a movie theater with your family trying to enjoy a movie and people got their phone out trying to record you. Come on, man.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. And that's when I realized, man, I am so glad I am not more famous than this. I want to be famous enough to sell 300 tickets per night or per show to every show. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And past that,
Yeah.
I don't need to have like people like bugging me at airports. Like when I manage celebrities and we walk through airports, it takes us over an hour just to get out of the airport.
Ugh. Yeah, that sounds terrible. That sounds
Right.
terrible. Well, thank you again. Thank you very much for your
You
time.
got
I
it.
do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. And as always, I always give the last couple of minutes to my guests. If there's anything specific they'd like to plug, the floor is yours.
Okay, so my website is comicdante.com. That's Dante. I am performing all over the place. Come see me wherever my schedule says, it's on there. If you do want to hire celebrities or comedians for your whatever, parties or theaters or whatever, go to Golden Artists with an S, entertainment.com, Golden Artists Entertainment.com. I own the company, so reach out to me. My email is on there. And if you want to watch clips of me, I'm on YouTube and all social media, Dante the Comic, Dante the Comic. And on YouTube, I think it's Dante the Comic 2522. You can watch tons of my stand-up on there. Tons. And I'm also an activist. You can see me yelling at the police in a lot of videos. Tons. And being beaten up by them, too. It's crazy.
Awesome. Well, Dante, thank you very much, my man. It's been fun.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.